You stopped caring. The people who once drained you emotionally now receive nothing from you. You've become cold, distant, unreachable. And the strangest part is that you feel no guilt about it. But this is not avoidant attachment as modern psychology defines it. Jung describes something far more dangerous, a necessary withdrawal into the self that signals the start of a total psychological transformation. What happens when the empath finally stops absorbing everyone else's pain and begins protecting their own consciousness? Today, we explore Jung's most controversial insight into empaths who shut the door and never looked back. The case that changed everything began at Jung's Zurich clinic in 1917. A patient arrived showing what looked like classic withdrawal symptoms. She refused to engage with her family, avoided social events, and had systematically cut contact with nearly everyone from her former life. Other therapists diagnosed her with depression, social anxiety, even schizoid personality disorder. But Jung saw something entirely different. He saw an empath who had finally learned to conserve her psychic energy. This patient had spent 32 years being what Jung called an emotional shock absorber for everyone around her. An alcoholic father, a narcissistic mother, abusive relationships, toxic friendships. She absorbed it all, rationalized it all, forgave it all again and again. Then something shifted. Jung recorded it in his private notes as the clarity event, the moment when accumulated betrayal finally overwhelmed the empath's need to see the best in people. What followed terrified everyone who knew her. The patient did not collapse. She did not cry, scream, or beg for explanations. Instead, she became unnaturally calm. Jung described it as watching someone finally remove a mask worn for 3 decades. The performance of caring was over. She stopped explaining herself, stopped defending her perceptions, stopped trying to make unconscious people understand conscious observations. Her family called it cruelty. Jung called it boundary enforcement. What made this case extraordinary was the precision of her change. Jung noted that she did not become cold toward everyone. She became selectively unavailable to those who had proven they would exploit her availability. Her husband, who cheated while she forgave and absorbed his shame. Her mother, who had unloaded unprocessed rage onto her daughter for 30 years. Her siblings, who reached out only when they needed emotional labor. Within 2 weeks, she cut them all off. No dramatic confrontations. No long explanations. When accused of being heartless, she did not defend herself. Here is what Jung discovered about empaths that modern psychology still struggles to accept. Empaths do not feel more than others. They perceive more. Their brains process emotional information at levels most humans never access. They detect the lies beneath polite conversation, the desperation behind confidence, the manipulation hidden as concern. In his Red Book period notes, Jung wrote that there are those whose psychic apparatus is so finely tuned that they absorb not only conscious communication but the entire unconscious atmosphere of their environment. This is not a gift. It is a burden that destroys most who carry it. The empath sees everything. And seeing everything means carrying everyone else's rejected shadow material. The anger a mother refuses to acknowledge. The insecurity a partner hides behind arrogance. The cruelty a friend disguises as honesty. Empaths become containers for the darkness others refuse to integrate. This creates what Jung called participation mystique, a state where the empath's psychological boundaries dissolve completely. They can no longer tell their own emotions apart from the unconscious content they absorb from others. They feel depressed, but the depression belongs to their spouse. They feel anxious, but the anxiety is their parents' unprocessed trauma. They feel worthless, but the shame is being projected onto them by people who cannot face their own inadequacy. Most empaths spend decades trapped in this state, absorbing, processing, healing everyone except themselves. Jung identified what finally breaks this cycle. It is not a single massive betrayal. It is accumulation. Micro-betrayal after micro-betrayal, all minimized by the empath who keeps believing people will eventually recognize their sacrifice and return their care. The empath remembers everything. Every time they were called too sensitive for naming the truth. Every boundary violation. Every moment they predicted exactly what would happen and were told they were negative. Jung called this the emotional ledger. Empaths keep flawless records in their unconscious. This ledger builds silently for years, sometimes decades. Then comes the final entry, the betrayal that tips the scale. It is often not the worst thing that happened. It is simply the moment the pattern becomes undeniable. The clarity event occurs when the empath's pattern recognition finally overpowers their hope. They see with absolute certainty that the person they protected will never change. That the family system they stabilized is fundamentally toxic. That their empathy has been weaponized by people who see compassion as weakness to exploit. In that moment, something inside the empath dies. Not their capacity to feel, but their willingness to feel for those who do not deserve it. Jung documented what happens next with clinical precision. The empath stops absorbing. They stop explaining. They stop defending their reality against others' projections. They become what everyone else calls avoidant. But this is not avoidant attachment. This is strategic withdrawal. This is the conservation of psychic energy. This is what Jung described as shadow integration. And here is the part that terrifies those who have been feeding off empaths. The transformation is permanent. An empath who has integrated their shadow does not return to people-pleasing. They do not apologize for boundaries. They no longer doubt their perceptions. They become psychologically whole by finally accepting the part of themselves they were taught to deny, the capacity to be cold. Society conditions empaths to believe that coldness equals cruelty, that withdrawal is abandonment, that saying no is selfish. This conditioning serves a precise function. It keeps empaths available for exploitation. Jung understood that the ability to be cold is not the opposite of empathy. It is empathy's necessary shadow. You cannot genuinely care for others without also having the capacity to stop caring for those who abuse your care. The empath who has never integrated this cold shadow is not virtuous. They are unconscious. The integrated empath develops what Jung called conscious cruelty. Not cruelty for its own sake, but the ability to be ruthlessly precise with people who mistake kindness for weakness. They can read you completely, perceive your insecurities, wounds, and fears with absolute clarity, and choose not to accommodate them anymore. This is what makes the awakened empath so dangerous to manipulators. They retain all their perceptive abilities, but they are no longer obligated to use them in service of those who do not reciprocate. Jung documented a striking example. His patient encountered her ex-husband 2 years after their divorce. He attempted his familiar manipulation tactics. In the past, she would have absorbed everything. This time, she looked at him with surgical detachment and said, "Your tactics worked when I was unconscious." Then she walked away. Jung noted that she had simply stopped pretending she did not see his manipulation. This is the integrated empath's true power. They can feel everything and choose everything. They can be warm as summer with those who earn it and cold as winter with those who do not. They can move between these states consciously, strategically, without guilt. Jung's patient embodied this perfectly. When her family confronted her about her coldness, she did not defend herself. She stated facts. "You have used my empathy as a dumping ground for 32 years. I am no longer available for that role. The conversation is over." Her family accused her of being heartless. Jung noted that she had simply learned to direct her heart toward people who valued it. This is where Jung's analysis becomes controversial. He observed that when empaths stop absorbing everyone else's shadow material, entire social systems begin to collapse. The alcoholic who relied on the empath to manage their chaos must finally face their addiction. The narcissist who used the empath as an emotional punching bag loses their primary target. The dysfunctional family organized around the empath's caretaking role begins to disintegrate. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly. When empaths withdraw from their caretaking position, systems collapse. In one case, both parents blamed the empath for abandoning the family. In another, a friend group fell apart when their emotional glue disappeared. The empath's withdrawal does not cause these collapses. It reveals them. These systems were always broken. The empath was simply holding them together. Jung called this the scapegoat's revenge, though he emphasized it was not revenge at all. The empath does not punish anyone. They simply stop preventing natural consequences. When the person absorbing all the dysfunction steps away, that dysfunction must go somewhere. Most often, it returns to those who created it. But what fascinated Jung most about the empath's transformation was this: avoidance is not the final state. It is a necessary phase in what he called the individuation process. Individuation is Jung's term for becoming psychologically whole. For the empath, this means learning to feel everything without being destroyed by it, to see clearly without becoming cynical, to care deeply without losing oneself. The avoidant phase is where the empath builds the psychological structure required to preserve their identity while engaging with others' unconscious contents. They learn to create what Jung called containers, mental spaces where another person's pain can be held temporarily without being absorbed permanently. This is entirely different from the empath's previous condition. Before, there were no boundaries. Everything flowed inward. After integration, boundaries become conscious and permeable. The empath chooses what enters and what stays out. Jung outlined 3 distinct stages in the empath's shift from unconscious absorption to conscious engagement. Stage 1 is recognition. The empath must acknowledge that they have been carrying psychological material that does not belong to them. This demands radical self-honesty. The depression you have carried for 5 years may not be yours. The anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. may be your mother's unprocessed fear. The shame that convinces you of your worthlessness may be projected by a partner who cannot face their own inadequacy. Recognition is painful because it means admitting that much of what you experienced as your inner world was actually contamination from others' unconscious minds. Stage 2 is withdrawal. This is the avoidant phase. The empath must completely remove themselves from systems that have been using them as emotional dumping grounds. No contact with toxic family members. No explanations to manipulative partners. No attempts to make unconscious people understand conscious observations. This stage feels cruel to everyone except the empath. Because for the first time, the empath prioritizes their own psychological survival over everyone else's comfort. What happens during withdrawal is critical. The empath is not merely avoiding people. They are decontaminating their psyche. Years of absorbed emotions and unconscious manipulation leave residue. Jung compared it to a sponge that has soaked up toxic water for decades. For empaths, solitude is the clean water that allows contamination to drain away. During this phase, many experience what Jung called the great exhaustion. They sleep more. They withdraw from stimulation. This is not depression. It is recovery. Jung stressed that this withdrawal is not optional. You cannot learn to hold boundaries while remaining inside systems that punish you for having them. The empath must fully extract themselves, enter what Jung called solitude and self-confrontation, and build psychological structure in an environment free from constant intrusion. Stage 3 is the conscious return. After the empath learns to separate their own psychological content from what they absorbed. After integrating their shadow capacity for coldness. After building strong internal containers. Only then can they re-engage with the world, but they return fundamentally changed. They are no longer the person everyone dumps on. They are selectively empathetic, strategically compassionate, consciously engaged. Jung called these individuals integrated empaths. They possess exceptional emotional intelligence, but they use it with warrior-level precision. They can still read you completely, sense your wounds, and perceive your unconscious motives. But they are no longer required to heal you, forgive you, or tolerate your dysfunction. This creates what Jung described as a reality distortion field for people who knew the empath before the transformation. The person who once absorbed everything now deflects everything. The one who always explained themselves now offers no explanations. The one who begged to be understood no longer cares whether they are understood. For manipulators, this is psychological death. You cannot guilt someone who no longer feels guilty. You cannot gaslight someone who fully trusts their own perceptions. You cannot manipulate someone who sees every tactic before it takes shape. Jung observed that integrated empaths often lose most of their pre-transformation relationships. Not because they aggressively cut people off, but because unconscious individuals cannot tolerate being near someone who reflects their shadow with such clarity. The empath becomes a mirror. And most people will break the mirror rather than face what it shows. But Jung also recorded something profound about this process. The integrated empath attracts an entirely different kind of person. Those who have done their own inner work. People capable of reciprocal empathy. individuals who see consciousness as something to cultivate rather than fear. Jung believed this was the empath's true purpose. Not to heal everyone, but to find the few capable of mutual depth. The many who rejected you were never your people. They were obstacles you had to outgrow in order to find your real tribe. The culmination of Jung's research came when he realized what the empath's transformation truly represented. This was not merely personal healing. It was the evolution of consciousness unfolding in real time. Jung wrote that the individual has always been the carrier of the living spirit, the agent through which society changes. Empaths who successfully integrate their shadow serve a collective role. They show other empaths that transformation is possible. They model boundaries for those who have never seen them. They demonstrate that sensitivity does not require victimhood. Jung's patient from 1917 became one of his most successful cases. After 3 years of individuation work, she had completely rebuilt her life. A new career where her perceptive abilities were valued. Relationships grounded in mutual depth. Most importantly, she stopped experiencing her sensitivity as a curse and began using it as a strength. She told Jung in their final session that becoming avoidant was the best thing that ever happened to her. Not because she enjoyed being cold, but because learning to be cold taught her she could survive without everyone's approval. That realization was freedom. Jung noted that she remained selectively avoidant for the rest of her life. Not toward everyone, only toward those who demonstrated they would exploit her empathy. She had developed what he called discernment, the ability to distinguish between people who deserved her gifts and those who would weaponize them. This is the integrated empath's true power. They can feel everything and choose everything. They can be warm as summer with those who earn it and cold as winter with those who do not. They shift between these states consciously, strategically, without guilt. Jung believed this represented the future of human psychology. Individuals capable of accessing the full spectrum of human emotion without being ruled by it. People who could be soft and hard, open and closed, vulnerable and armored, depending on what the situation required. But he also warned of the danger within this transformation. The integrated empath walks a narrow line between two psychological failures. On one side lies regression into unconscious absorption. On the other lies inflation into permanent coldness. Some empaths overcorrect. Determined never to be hurt again, they close themselves off entirely. They turn necessary withdrawal into permanent isolation. They use their perceptive abilities to punish rather than protect. Jung called this the hermit's trap, the belief that you have transcended the need for human connection, when in reality, you have simply been defeated by it. The truly integrated empath holds the tension between opposites. They stay open to real connection while remaining protected from exploitation. They remain sensitive to others' pain while deflecting others' projections. They continue to care deeply while refusing to care for those who do not reciprocate. This is psychological mastery, and Jung believed it was among the hardest achievements for a human being. Most people live in unconscious extremes, either completely open and endlessly wounded, or completely closed and emotionally numb. The integrated empath learns to move consciously between these poles. They open when it serves them and close when it protects them. Jung's final insight into the empath's transformation was this. The avoidant phase is not a personality trait. It is a developmental stage. You do not remain there forever. You pass through it on the way to something more complete. The empath who has fully integrated their shadow does not avoid relationships. They avoid toxic relationships. They do not fear intimacy. They fear intimacy with people who have not done their inner work. They do not struggle with trust. They simply trust their own perceptions about who deserves it. To those accustomed to empaths without boundaries, this looks like avoidance. In reality, it is the opposite. It is conscious engagement. It is strategic intimacy. It is love with teeth. Jung spent decades studying empaths who collapsed. He documented those who stayed broken, trapped in unconscious absorption until it destroyed them. And he honored those who transformed, those who integrated their shadow and became psychologically whole. His research showed that empaths are not destined to suffer. They are not required to carry everyone else's pain. They are not obligated to forgive people who continue to harm them. The empath's sensitivity is not a flaw in design. It is an advanced feature of consciousness that most people never develop. But without conscious integration, that feature turns into a weapon against its owner. When the empath finally becomes avoidant, they are not falling apart. They are breaking through years of conditioning that taught them their boundaries were selfish, through family systems that punished them for having needs, through relationships that exploited their care and called it love. The avoidant phase is the chrysalis. What emerges is not a cold person. It is a complete one. Someone who can feel everything without being destroyed by feeling. Someone who can see everything without becoming bitter from seeing. Someone who can love deeply without losing themselves. You were not born to be everyone's emotional support system. You were born to master your own consciousness and model that mastery for others. Your transformation from unconscious empath to integrated warrior is not selfish. It is necessary. The world does not need more empaths who absorb everything. It needs empaths who have integrated their shadow, established boundaries, and directed their gifts toward those who reciprocate. Jung's most dangerous discovery was not that empaths can become avoidant. It was that empaths who become avoidant and do the integration work become the most psychologically powerful people in any room. They hold empathy's gifts without its curses. They can read anyone, yet manipulate no one. They care deeply, but with intention. If you recognize yourself in this transformation, you are not broken. You are becoming whole. Those who accuse you of being cold simply cannot understand that you have finally learned to preserve your warmth for those who deserve it.